Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining today's call. I'm Rob Hello, one of the account managers here with Viome. We've got an exciting agenda for you guys today. So just in way of a quick run through, I'm going to give you guys a couple updates in terms of things on our end here at Viome. I'm going to introduce our two speakers who we're excited to have on. And then, as always, at the end of the call, so you guys will all be muted until the last 10 minutes when we open up for questions. But as you guys have questions throughout the call, please continue to submit them through the chat. So starting with some updates, the first exciting one, I'm sure you guys heard that we acquired Habit earlier this month. We acquired them from Campbell's Soup. And for those of you that don't know what Habit does, they are a at-home blood test DNA sequencing company. So similar to Viome in a couple of ways, but I guess in terms of food recommendations and that sort of thing. What I'll say is Habit's technology, we don't quite think it's Viome, but their interface, their user interface, their ability to integrate lifestyle goal sets and then their recipes are truly exceptional. And so we're very excited to have them on hand. And in terms of what that integration looks like going forward, it's only been a couple of weeks since the acquisition, so there's going to be more and more information that comes out over the next weeks and few months. So continue to pay attention to that. The only other update is just to continue to check the portal as things get posted and things get updated. Okay, so let's talk about today's speakers. So today's speakers were designed based on the feedback that you guys gave us. So when we look at what you guys come to us with, one of the big things is what's going on with the app, what changes are being made, what updates are happening. And so the first speaker we have is our project manager for the app, Shealeen, and she's going to walk through the most recent updates, what we call version 1.11, and talk to you about what's changed there, what we're excited about. The second speaker, and this goes to the second piece of feedback that we get from you guys, which is when it comes to using Viome and setting expectations for clients, what can clients expect to feel when they start to integrate these food recommendations? And then how do they put them into process? How do they create a system and a procedure around that so that this sticks? And then lastly is really just around the expectations. And so our second speaker is Shayna. She is an ambassador now, but initially she was just a client of Viome's, but her story is truly exceptional. So she will do a better job than I ever could telling it, but just a couple highlights. She, in the first 5 months using Viome, lost 71 pounds. She successfully avoided having to get gastric bypass surgery. And then to date, she's lost over 180 pounds, which is just a unbelievable feat for anybody. So her story is incredible. She'll tell you more about that when we get to her. But for now, what I'm going to do is turn it over to our first speaker, Shealeen. Tell us about what's going on with the app and the new changes that have occurred.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be on this call because that means we have new things, new exciting things in the app. Always trying to improve and make the experience the best we can. So let me go ahead and start by sharing my screen. And I'm going to talk about some of the most recent changes which are surrounded or involve the onboarding flow and our questionnaires. That's where I'm going to start, and then I'll just touch on 2 other smaller features and changes that recently were updated in mid-February for our app. So as soon as a customer registers their gut intelligence test, they are presented with the onboarding flow of answering their first set of questionnaires. If you guys remember before, we had some notifications in the app to let you know that you needed to complete your questionnaires, and the questionnaires were like a handful of long questions on one page, and it didn't save if you left the page, or it wasn't smart enough to know the difference between if you're male and female and if you should be asked if you're pregnant or not. So what we did, we took time to look at all the content of our questionnaires, the order in which they're asked, And then we gave it a new presentation, a new UI for how it looks and how you interact with answering questionnaires. So now you'll be answering questions one at a time. And also, rather than waiting for someone to navigate to their questions, we're immediately presenting users with their first set of questions to get them used to answering these sets of questions before they are able to receive their results and recommendations. So this is what the onboarding flow would look like as soon as someone registers their kit. They're going to be presented with the welcome message and their first set of questions, which are some personal questions about themselves. You can kind of think about them as profile questions. And then at the end of that flow, we ask, when was the sample collected, and if it has been collected so far. What's key here is that collection date. It's absolutely necessary now that we're a CLIA certified lab to have the date in which the sample was collected in order for us to process the sample. So if a user does start the onboarding flow and wants to start answering questions before they've collected their sample, it's fine. They can answer the question, have you collected your sample? They can say not yet, and we'll continue to prompt them for their sample collection date every time they return back to the app. Because again, it's very important to have that sample collection date. So I just wanted to show you what this onboarding flow looks like. We've gotten a lot of feedback on the date selector for entering birth date on both the desktop version, the web portal, and on the mobile app. So we're doing some enhancements on the user experience, the UX, so that we can ensure people are entering the correct birth dates. It's really easy to not update the year and to have your birth date in this year. So we're flagging those and letting customers know, but it is something to watch out for. Also, what's really important is that at the end of each questionnaire set, we do save and lock down the answers. So at this point, a customer can't go back and answer or edit any of their questions once they've completed a set of questions. So this was the onboarding flow. I'm gonna jump over to an account where we can look at all of the question sets. So for every kit registered, you have to answer these series of questionnaire sets. And once, like I was saying, once you answer the set of questions in that questionnaire set, then those answers will be in a display only mode and cannot be edited. So although we do have some messaging in the app about when answers are saved, like here at the top and at the end of each questionnaire set, we know it's been kind of a jarring experience. We've gotten some feedback from customers. So we're actually going to move away from this model in a couple weeks, and so that the questionnaires will remain open and can be edited up until the time that your sample is ready to be analyzed by AI. And so you're just a couple days away from getting recommendations. So at that point, that's when we'll lock down questionnaires. So you'll have about 3 weeks to answer your questions. Ideally, you answer them within a 14-day period of collecting your sample, because the answers are and should be tightly aligned with how you are feeling at the time of collecting your sample. As far as the UI on this page, for the questionnaire page, you can always go back and see your answers for a kit. So any kit that was registered on this date, all of those questionnaires will be grouped together. Completed questionnaires will have the check mark. And then once you do receive recommendations for a kit, we'll present you with what we're calling the progress questions. These are to help a customer start tracking how they're feeling each week after following recommendations, to see if they're losing weight, if their hip and weight measurements are going down, if their symptoms are starting to alleviate. So this just allows them to keep track. And you'll see the different UI, the differences between the check mark, meaning all your questions have been answered, versus the progress, meaning you haven't answered all the questionnaires yet. So those are the progress questionnaires. And by answering these questions, I just want to make it clear that the recommendations won't change based on the answers to these questions, but we will take them into account if you were to do a retest. So that's questionnaires and a little bit of the onboarding flow. In addition to helping a user get onboarded and knowing where they are in the cycle, we did a couple enhancements to the sample tracker. And so the homepage of the app will actually let you know what the status is of any sample that's in progress prior to getting results and recommendations. And you'll be notified of any changes in that status with the red icon here. And so I can go and see where my sample is. So at this point, the lab is still waiting to receive the sample. But you can always go and see previous samples and see the dates in which different events occurred. And it's easy to navigate to the food recommendations, your most recent ones from the tracker as well. I'm going to go back here to the home page, and then I'm going to just wrap up by talking about the last change in the app, and hopefully this allows you guys to be more flexible and versatile in sharing your results and recommendations. So previously, by clicking generate my report, your report would be emailed directly to the email in which your account was logged in as. However, moving forward, you have the flexibility to share your report with, your family members, friends, and most importantly, any doctors, medical practitioners that you're working with. So it's your results PDF and your recommendations PDF will be shared with the email address that you enter. And if you do start to type, an invalid email address, you will get notified, or you won't be able to actually share. So as long as you have a valid email address there, then you can share your results and recommendations. So that's all with the most recent changes in the app and in the web portal. We're underway in some exciting things that I think we'll be able to announce in the next ambassador call. But I also wanted to say that we're working really hard to bring back a lot of the scores that were removed from the app, post our CLIA certification. So if you remember, we had the relative activity on every organism and the diversity in human RNA score. So we're pretty close. We're working really hard. All of the teams are, to bring those back into the app as well. So you can look forward to those soon. That's it for me, Rob.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Shayleen. By the way, that is really exciting. The ability to share your results with people is something that a lot of the ambassadors and a lot of the clients have been asking for a long time. So the ability to finally do that is really exciting. So we're going to move on to our second speaker, Shayna Reed. Shayna, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me, Rob?
I can hear you perfectly. So Shayna, before I turn it over to you, your story is really, really impressive. And I'm blown away every time I talk to you. So before we get into anything Viome specific, can we talk a little bit about your backstory as it relates to health and to weight loss?
Absolutely. And first and foremost, thank you, Rob, for inviting me to speak today. My story, I love to share it because I hope it helps someone. But a little bit about me. My food addiction started, I want to say, about 15 years ago when I jumped into recovery. And so I basically substituted one addiction for another. So I ballooned, I gained lots of weight, upwards of 200 pounds. And I was told by every physician, listen, if you don't fix this, you're going to die. And so feeling hopeless and depressed and just utterly disgusted with myself, my physician had mentioned about the gastric bypass. And so I figured I'd take that route, a simple, fast way to lose all the weight. And she tested me and said, you're borderline diabetic. Your sleep tests are showing numbers of, basically you've stopped breathing about 7 times per minute. And that was all weight related, not to mention I felt terrible. I would find every excuse in the book to cancel from going to work because I just didn't feel it. I was over 400 pounds. And so I had started the gastric bypass procedure in the sense of, they require physicals and meetings with psychiatrists. I had started that process, but 2 weeks before the scheduled surgery date, I was introduced to Viome. And so my mentality was, well, I've tried everything else. Why not try this? And it's been life changing. So I'm happy to say I did not have the surgery. Viome has changed my life and given me some guidance where I didn't have any. And it's helped me learn to show discipline with my food habits, and it's just changed everything. And so, yes, you are correct. As of today, I'm 80, I think we're at 84 pounds down, 184 pounds down. And I feel fantastic. So yeah, I'm super happy.
So talk a little bit more. By the way, that's great. I love that part of the story because it shows kind of where you came from. But tell me again, how did you get introduced to Viome? How was that introduced into your life?
So we'll backtrack and then fast forward. I appeared on Dr. Oz back in February for the drastic weight loss. But it was Dr. Oz that introduced this to me. So I'd gone public with my weight loss struggle and definitely showcased all the failures in my life with the weight loss. And I was reached out to by his production team, and they said, "Hey, I think you're a perfect candidate for this. We're in the research process. Would you be willing to take this test for free? And we just want to track your success or track your progress, so to speak." And of course, I said absolutely. So I again substituted one for another. I dismissed the gastric bypass option and said, I'm going to give this my all. So I was shipped a kit back in 2017. And I submitted that to you guys. And then I did get the results, but I didn't do anything with the results just yet. It took me a long time to analyze and really understand what it was telling me. And once I read the results and analyzed it, I knew what I had to do. But it was Dr. Oz. And so he followed up with me monthly and tracked my progress with me. And after the 70th pound loss, he said, I'm flying you in. We need to air this. This is fantastic. You are amazing. We're so grateful for Viome for helping you. Can you be in New York on February 16th? And so I jumped on a plane and there it was.
I love it. Talk to me a little bit about those first 3 months, or really the first month and then the first 3 months through the process. What you did, how you approached it, what your mentality was like.
So Rob, it's easier said than done. Here, follow these suggestions. It really took analyzing what it was telling me. So, the common sense aspect of, okay, no more pies and no more French fries and things like that. That's just, I knew that was coming. But I mean, even some of the healthy foods were on there that we think are healthy were on my avoid list. So I really had to study this because I'm on the road a lot. I travel all over the world speaking about my recovery story. And so there's not healthy options everywhere I go. So what I did for me, the first thing was I created a list and I put it in my pocketbook because I can pull that out in, discreetly when I'm at a restaurant or something. And I learned to tweak dishes and come up with my own fantastic meal that was Viome suggested, so to speak. And that was healthy for me and that wasn't causing more damage. And so that was the first thing. But I utilized that app like it was the holy Bible of food suggestions because I knew within the suggestions were what's good for me. It was specified to me. And so I took that very serious. And so before I consumed anything, I really would search to make sure that it was something I could eat. And if it wasn't, I didn't eat it. And so learning the discipline aspect of this whole process was the hardest obstacle for me, because it's easy to buy a bag of potato chips or eat a can of, canned oranges over eating something that's nutritious, that tastes amazing and is okay, or in my indulge list. So that was the biggest hurdle. But by month 2, it was instilled. It was drilled into my brain. I knew what I could eat. I knew what I couldn't eat. And learning how to incorporate the two was my next biggest obstacle, because you have the minimized list. And I think, for me, at least in the beginning, I thought that meant don't eat it. Well, you need that in your gut too. So learning how to incorporate the two. So I live by the 25, 50, and 25 rule. So I'll consume 25% of my meal will be the minimize, 50% will be the superfood, and 25% will be the enjoy. So learning to incorporate those together has been so successful for me. And like I said, now it's just habit. I know what I can eat. I enjoy tweaking meals. I become like Chef Shay in the kitchen, because I have Viome open and then I have my food in front of me and I'm just cooking. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I love Viome.
So a couple of things that I heard you say there, and we've talked about this in previous conversations. You had 2 handwritten lists. You had the restaurant list, and then you had the at-home list. So when you went to a restaurant, there was things you could eat. And one of the best examples you gave last time we chatted was, you can have fajitas, hold the rice. That falls into and that checks a lot of boxes in terms of superfoods and enjoys. You can throw the guacamole on there, but you just get rid of the rice. You get rid of the tortilla, because those are not good for you. And that makes it much more manageable.
Right.
One of the other things that I loved the last time we chatted was you mentioned that you put the scale away for the first 3 months. You just didn't look. You put the system in place and you just committed to it. And then when you hopped back on after the first 3 months, how much were you down?
So my numbers are in my journal. The first 3 months, I believe I was down between 50 and 60 pounds. It wasn't until Dr. Oz reached back out to me that I weighed in again, and I was down 70, and that was at the 6-month mark. So, putting the scale away, I'm glad you mentioned that, is super important, because people, including myself, think that if the numbers drop, you're doing something right. Well, in my case, the numbers didn't drop right away, but my size did. My pants were getting looser. My tops were much bigger. I was losing inches. So I think it's super important to take your body measurements first, and use that as a reference rather than the scale, because I was losing fat but building muscle. And so muscle weighs more than fat. So that can be very deceiving to someone who's vulnerable and trying to lose weight, like myself. So numbers, to me, getting rid of the scale for the first 3 months of my journey helped me mentally more than I think anyone will ever know. And that's my suggestions to all, and everyone I come in contact with, is move the scale, take the battery out, hide it. Don't look at the scale and use that as a motivation or your, whatever. Measure yourself, and those numbers don't lie either. The measuring tape kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, until I think when I first started this journey, my hips were at a 58. I am now a 42. So I mean, that just is an astronomical number for difference between when I started till now. But the scale doesn't always move. And so I think that can really be detrimental to someone early in their journey. If they don't see the scale move, they'll be disappointed and want to give up. And my suggestion is just move the scale. Pretend it doesn't exist for your first 3 months.
So I love that, because it allows you to get into a rhythm and create a process without focusing too much on the initial results. So you can create sustainable. So tell me a little bit about, nobody's perfect. There's going to be those times when you want the donut. There's going to be those times when you just want the snack. How do you handle that in terms of the initial treat, and then let's say if you do end up falling off the wagon, how do you get things back on track?
Well, that is a great conversation. I have that a lot. I get asked that a lot. So for me, I did some research, and it turns out that about 80% of our cravings are satisfied within the first bite of whatever it is we're craving. And so I'm like, well, let me try this. And so, when I'm out with friends and everyone's eating cheesecake, I love cheesecake. Does my body like cheesecake? Absolutely not. And so I tried it, one spoonful, and I was surprised at how satisfied I really was. Did I want more? Absolutely. Did I eat more? No. And so that doesn't necessarily throw you off, but that can start leading into, okay, well, I guess I can just have a little bit more. And so when I do have those moments, because I do, it is super important to get back on track. And what I do is I start, this isn't a substitute or a fix, so to speak, but I start drinking more water because I know my body is going to hold on to those bad foods. It's going to store it. It's done it for many years. I need to consume a lot more water when I cheat. And so what that does for me is it gets me, sort of like snaps me back, like, Shayna, what did you do? And I just work harder the next day. And so I do think it's important to not deprive yourself. So I do set a day throughout the week where I can allow myself to have some goodies or some treats. I'm human. Who doesn't want, something from the Chinese store or pizza? But the biggest I'm going to say suggestion is the portion control. So you can have little pieces of things that aren't so healthy, but don't eat the whole thing like I used to do. I could eat a whole pizza pie. So now I'll just have a few bites or a piece and I'm okay. But if I get back into the habit of eating more and more and more, I'm just going to spiral out of control. Food is an addiction for me. So I know my triggers. So I try to stay away from those things. And, if people around me are eating it, I just make sure I'm munching on something else that's delicious to me. But portion control is key. And, making it so it's not every day is definitely a big factor in my weight loss journey. So you can still eat it sometimes and not so much of it. And if you can follow those, you're going to see a huge difference in how things pan out, because 3 months from the day you start doing this, and then if you do decide to eat something that's not so good for you, the taste is totally different. It's almost like your body's rejecting it because it makes me sick now. Donuts, I'm glad you brought up donuts. Used to be my favorite treat. Now, if I eat it, I do get sick. And I think that's my body's way of rejecting the sugars, the carbs. It tastes fantastic, but my body says no.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing you said there is when it comes to a craving and when it comes to indulging, it's just that first bite. And so I feel like a lot of people, I'm certainly a victim of it, is you have that first bite and then you feel like you've fallen off the wagon. And so if it's
right.
first thing in the morning, the whole day is shot. And then you
yes.
just, throw everything out the window and just completely fall off the wagon. Whereas if you have one bite and it doesn't feel like you've completely fallen apart, you've satisfied that craving, you can stay on track overall, and that'll be sustainable. So Shayna, the last question I have for you is, you've come this far, you've lost over 180 pounds, you've completely changed your lifestyle, your diet, everything.
Yes.
Now, what are the goals going forward? What are the next 3, 6 months, a year look like for you? What do you want to do?
Well, I'm not done with Viome, and I know Viome's not done with me. And so I plan on retesting. This will be my third test in this year and a half time span. And I think it's important to retest because it's showing me where I started, where I'm coming from, where I'm at now. So I plan on retesting and taking those results and running with it the same way I ran with the first two, because I still have some more weight to lose. I just want to be healthy. I'm not looking to be a size 2. I just want to be the healthiest me. And I think because I'm a person who needs structure and guidance, I'm a leader, but I still have weaknesses, and my weakness is food. And so Viome has been that guidance for me. So I think I'm going to rewrite my list, make a new restaurant list, make a new home list, and take what Viome provides to me, which is, I'm so grateful for, and use that to lose this last 50 pounds. My goal was originally 100 pounds, and I surpassed that. My next goal was 150. I surpassed that. my last goal is 230, because mind you, I was 400 and, maybe 410 pounds. And so I just want to be at a healthy weight. And then I'll deal with the rest after that. I feel fantastic. I am half the size of what I used to be. So thank you, Viam, for that. Like I said, my main goal is just to be healthy. And I guess my biggest goal is not to lose focus and gain any of this back, because it's super easy to fall back into old habits, because we're creatures of habits, right? And so I don't want to fall back into the old habit. I don't want to blow up and gain all of this hard work, back. So to maintain the weight loss is the biggest hurdle. So that's my main goal. Lose 50 pounds and keep it off.
I love it. Inspirational as always. I love every time I have an opportunity to speak to you, because you make me want to change everything about myself and make no excuses. So I love it. Shayna, I think that you epitomize what it means to put a plan in place. One of the things that we left out earlier was when you started with Viome, you put the scale away and you also got rid of everything in your house that was not, or I should say was on your avoid list. And having a system like that in place, if it's not there, you can't eat it. And so, you put together the two lists of the restaurant and the home list. You basically created a rubric that was easy for you to follow and allowed you to have success over the long term. And I think when you think about how far you've come at over 180 pounds lost, you want to do another 50. If you were to look at that on a day-to-day basis, it really probably wouldn't look like that much. You're not going to see a quarter pound change on a scale. But over the course of 3 months or 6 months or a year, it becomes very dramatic. So thanks for sharing all that with us. I've got a couple things coming through the chat, so I'm just going to glance at that quickly before we sign off. Oh, here's a good question. So this one is for Shayna. Other than weight loss, what health issues were you dealing with before Viome?
Well, that's a great question. Are you ready? So sleep apnea. They said that my neck was, I had so much fat surrounding my neck that it was causing suffocation in my sleep. I was pre-diabetic. I had fatty liver, leaky gut, and what else? I can't say that I had high blood pressure or anything, but those were the major issues. All of those now, I am no longer in the red or danger zones. In fact, my primary care is shocked how low my, the diabetes test. I went from a 5.9, which is the borderline to being diabetic, to well below 5. I'm sorry. I believe a little bit below 5. So like 4.9 or something like that. I don't recall off the top of my head, but all of those issues are gone. I no longer have sleep apnea. The fatty liver, I was retested with a, I don't want to say the test, but it was done, and it is no longer looking too fatty. And I see another, do you want me to just answer this, Rob? It said, what supplements did I take?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, Viome doesn't talk particular supplements.
I can't hear you, Rob.
Particular brand names, but yeah, certainly share what you were on, because I think a portion of that was due to your specific needs. So as long as it's not a blanket.
I'm not hearing anyone. No. To answer that question, no, I took only prebiotics or probiotics. I took both.
Okay.
That's it. It was in the form of a powder, and I would just drink it daily, and that's what helped me keep my gut in check.
Simple enough. Simple and straightforward. I love it. So Shayna, the other question that people were asking about is retest, because you've mentioned you've done 2 retests. They were asking if it was at a discount. The answer is yes. So within the first 3 months of you ordering a kit and completing your sample, you have the ability to purchase a retest at $149. And then after that point, after the initial 3 months, it bumps up to $200. But that is substantially reduced from the $399 sticker price. So the whole point here is, when you look at Shayna's story, you want to see improvement longitudinally. So the ability to constantly retest and see how you're improving, and you remember, your gut is fluid. It's adjusting as you start to put these new foods in there. And so testing that on a regular basis is critical for this process. So the question was, was Shayna tested for any pathogens? I don't know if you did any other testing outside of Viome, but Viome is certainly going to be looking at pathogens and parasites and viruses, everything that's there in the
Yes.
activity levels. So I don't know if you did anything in addition to that, Shayna.
I did not. Now, I know the old app used to go into detail about all the bacteria and viruses found in my gut. I don't really see that too much with the newer updated app. But yes, it tested for all of that, and you would have been so surprised as to what I was told about what was in my gut. I won't go into that, but I wasn't tested outside of Viome. No, the initial app that I did almost 2 years ago gave me full description of everything. Um, it showed some viruses and some obviously the good and bad bacteria that was in my gut, but there were some things that were a red flag to me, and so I did have my primary care review it, and she basically agreed with Viome that certain foods are causing or lead factors to why this is showing up in your sample. So obviously removing those foods should help reduce that was found in your sample. So yeah, it was very upsetting to read some of the stuff found, but now I don't see that. So
Here's what I'll say too is, so, and Maureen, your follow-up question, which, does this only test bacterial imbalances? So Viome has the ability to look at bacteria, viruses, pathogens, parasites, eukaryotes, everything that's living there that is active. And then to Shayna's point, the initial results, so we continue to show everything that we show, or everything that the test will see. So all of the different bugs that are there, you'll see in your test. What Shayna was alluding to is we used to show the activity level there as well. Due to the recent CLIA registration, we've had to take that out temporarily, but the hope is down the line to work that back in, because on the testing side, we certainly see that, and that goes into your scores. What I would say as a general rule of thumb is not to get too bogged down in the actual parasites or viruses that are there. So a lot of people will look at this and go out and get a whole biology degree, learning every single bacteria and microbe that's in their gut and what does it do and what is its function. And independently, you can't really look at these bugs on a case-by-case basis, because what's important is how are they functioning within the greater community? How are they, if you have a bad virus, or if you have E. coli in your gut, do you have good bacteria that's keeping it in check and keeping the activity level down? Because if that's the case, then E. coli in low amounts, in the right amounts, with the right environment, is actually beneficial to your gut. And so I would recommend that people don't get too bogged down in the specific microbes that are there. And that's what the scores are for. And Shealeen can talk more about this if you'd like, but that's what the scores are there for, is to take all of this data. Remember that when we sequence your gut, we get 5 gigabytes of raw data. That's the equivalent of a public library's worth of books. And then through the app and through the AI, we're able to sequence that into meaningful, actionable scores and recommendations for people. So the last question, I think we should probably wrap up after this one, because we're at about the 45-minute mark, is does Viome tell you simply what's in your gut, or does it talk about pathogens in other parts of the body outside of the gut? So when you think about Viome's testing, it's a stool test. And so we are going to see what is in the microbiome within the gut. But at this point, we do not show, for instance, pathogens that occur on the skin or in the mouth or other parts of the body. That's not to say that down the road we don't incorporate those tests, because the technology is there to do so. But the test as it stands now is simply going to be the gut microbiome. Okay, so I think that was great today. I think we covered a lot of information. What I'll end with is 2 points. One, I want to thank both of our speakers, Shayna and Shealeen. You guys were terrific today. I want to thank all of the support staff that makes this possible. Erica, Ashley, Ted, you guys are terrific. They're the guys that put all of this together and make this fluid for me. And then lastly, thanks to all of you guys for joining the call, because at the end of the day, this is the way that Viome was able to iterate in the right direction. Is feedback from you guys, tuning into these calls, staying educated, and letting us know what you think and what you'd like to change or improve upon, so we can constantly making this the best product that we can possibly make it. So with that, if you guys have any questions, comments, etc., I think most of you guys have my email. Feel free to shoot me a note. And everybody have a great weekend. So thanks so much for tuning in.